Welcome to LoTech Tuesdays by LoTech and Wild, the podcast for people who live their lives unplugged and for those who want to. Hey, David.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Good.
I should recognize what a morning is of re-entry when you're gone for 5 days. So.
Oh, where were you?
I was working at a trade show in Kansas City.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I got back last night, and then I had a 2.5-hour dry tooling session with one of the gyms this morning as they're starting to put together a dry tool program. So went in and did that silly thing for 2.5 hours.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, that's got to be the best part about the job, right? Is that you get to travel. Yeah. But I mean, more fun is doing workshops like that, right?
Yep, exactly.
So you've been doing this for, since 1992. Is that right?
92. Yes. Yeah. So I started in the fall of 92.
And this, and Perpetual Motion started as paddle sport equipment.
Well, my first rep position was with paddle sports.
Okay.
I was spending a fair amount of time kayaking at that time. And I remember very clearly we were coming back from the kayak race with a bunch of friends, and my girlfriend was going to move from Colorado to Washington to attend Evergreen College, my wife now. And someone asked me what I was going to do. I was like, I don't know, either get a new girlfriend or get a job. I think the job might be a little easier, so maybe I'll go that way. And a friend of mine at the table, Landis Arnold, was importing pre-on kayaks out of Germany. So someone suggested, hey, why don't you just work for Landis? And I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I guess I could do that. With every, how would I say it, every person that comes into the industry thinking about, oh, wow, I'm going to do that. I get all that free stuff, and I get to do all that stuff, almost like you're sponsored. But I literally took about 4 months to get him to convince him to hire me, because he never had luck hiring friends. And I threw a clipboard on the front seat of my truck and drove out of Breckenridge with 6 kayaks on the top of it and started working. No mentor. I was in the food industry, so I had a really good knowledge of how to buy and sell and how to merchandise. And I always joked with Mark Pagner from Chaco. I said, your sandals don't go bad in 48 hours. A chicken does. So I can move these things. So
nice.
I built it from there.
What were you doing in the food industry?
I was a butcher for many years. Yeah.
So you really did have to have that sales lined up right away, because I mean, quality and freshness, unless you're curing something, I mean, that's really, the goal, right?
Yeah, very much so. We would buy on almost a daily basis. We would re-merchandise every single day. You set your counter up, I learned a lot of lessons. Something didn't sell. There was a reason for it. You just had to figure it out. So,
okay.
You were constantly looking at how to get the best presentation and such out of it. So
it was a transferable skill.
Very much so. Stuff is stuff. So,
but still, you put 6 kayaks on top of your car.
My little pickup truck, and I actually stopped to kayak a river, and I ran into a friend of mine who was in the industry, the outdoor industry, and he mentioned to me a guy that was doing a snowshoe for his thesis project at Stanford. So I wrote his number down. That ended up being Perry Claiborne, and we ended up building Atlas snowshoes from that thesis project. So it had me in the snow sports industry for quite a long time with snowshoes. And then when I was calling on my first kayak dealer, I noticed some sandals in a box called Gecko. And I knew the town they were made in, Paonia, Colorado. So I said, I'll write that number down. Reached out, got involved with Gecko sandals, which eventually turned into Chaco sandals.
So what was your pitch then? I mean, were you just like, hey, I feel like being a brand rep and, I've got this snowshoe thing going on, and I had, once upon a time tied six kayaks to my pickup truck. So, how about if I, represent Gecko? I mean,
Well,
it's your pitch.
that was exactly it. In fact, the owner looked at me and he said, never worked in an outdoor store. You've never sold outdoor stuff. So I told him all about selling food product, perishables, And I looked at him, I said, you make 2 sandals, 2 different colors. They go a full year. You can have a fall sale if you have too many, and they don't go bad. I said, I buy everything with the intention of selling it in 2 days, and I don't get the option of putting it on sale late in the year to get rid of it. So he kind of shook his head and said, okay, I guess I can see that. So I started driving around with my clipboard and my couple sandal samples and my kayak sample, and waited till the next winter to start selling the snowshoes. So started from there. So a lot of miles, a lot of time on the road. I think my first year I drove 40,000 miles and managed to stay in one hotel room for the whole time. I made a whopping $23 taxable income that year. So
nice. Well, I mean, these days everybody's all about the van life, right?
Oh yeah, I was way ahead of that long time ago. So
I mean, this is a personal question, but weren't you concerned walking into, a shop coming from your van? I mean, weren't you like,
oh no, not at all.
Smelling fixing your hair. Really?
Yep. Oh, it's just, hats are wonderful. You can go kayaking and wash off when you're kayaking. So
there you go. Oh my goodness. Wow. So really what you're telling me is that you have to have a lot of guts, and you have to have a lot of gumption. And
yeah, the industry's changed so much since, those were, I'm not going to use the word good old days and stuff, but there was a lot of emerging brands, young brands that were unique. Most of the stuff that's in our product category in the outdoor industry is born from the frustration of someone using somebody else's stuff they don't like. Mm-hmm. They're trying to reinvent it or improve it and stuff. And, there was a lot of room for innovation because there was a lot of new areas. It's getting harder to have that type of innovation because product and materials are so accessible. If you're building a certain category, you're using pretty much the same components with it and stuff. So what do you bring into the market now? What's disruptive? Obviously making things now with as much sustainability in mind is really important. Mm-hmm. Even though we're kind of hypocritical because we make stuff out of plastic and we don't really need it. We just do it for fun. But when I got into the industry, it was all just one man, one woman shows driving around in their vehicles.
Yeah. Well, so do you really think that there needs to be a disruptor? I mean, do you really think, aren't we like just subtly, like you said, going from driving around in our cars to a new potential, pollutant, which is using all of our technology, right? And then B, making things out of plastic for fun, which is of course tongue in cheek, but at the same time, the concept of sustainability is, finally making some traction. And it is ironic and it is paradoxical because you are in an industry where people love the outdoors. And when you love something, you want to protect it. And so it's natural for sustainability to be the next game changer or, thought engine for the products.
Agree, 100%. And, coming from a paddle background, we always wanted to have the river to ourselves. As climbers, we want to have the mountain to ourselves and such. But no collective voices, and we're playing catch up. We're paying for some of that. We're paying for a lot of land that was taken over where no one was paying attention to because no one was going to that little corner of the globe or the state or the area. And now that people are becoming more aware of it, I think someone who goes for a day hike right outside the city or even in the city is investing. They're taking ownership in that. You know, one of the things I loved about snowshoeing is the definition of snowshoeing is all over the place. Someone who goes for a walk around the park on snowshoes went snowshoeing, the same as a person that went up to Paradise at Camp in Mount Rainier and went snowshoeing. So that activity brings someone outside, gives them the exposure, and then there's that little bit of ownership we hope it takes. So when the voices are needed collectively, there's more and more voices there.
Yeah. Well, we have we have more nonprofits also that are outdoor industry oriented, like Access Fund. Whereas maybe before it was just Sierra Club, which is just like, okay, all of nature we want to protect, you know. Yep. But now we have specific companies that are nonprofits, like Even People for Bikes, yes. You know, that are advocating for outdoor recreation specifically. And I think probably, you know, there's the Boundary Waters Conservation Alliance, and there's a lot of even for depending on whatever sport it is that you are that you're interested in.
Agree, and there are some amazing organizations. Obviously, as a rep and as an agency, we've really been supportive of the Access Fund and the Conservation Alliance and the American Alpine Club. Those are all really important to us. Really important to us.
So, how many sports do you actually take part in yourself? I mean, this is you have a very wide variety of interests. I mean, paddling, do you run?
I ran.
Okay, me too. Yeah, past tense. CrossFit, CrossFit, right? Climbing.
Yeah. So, you know, my mother would say I'm ADD, but I like to think that I just have. I love a variety of activities. So seasonally, that's a nice thing. I'm outside of Seattle now in the foothills, and you know, I'm trying to decide: do I go dry tooling in the rain tomorrow? Do I go up and try to go skiing on some of the new snow? The paddling would be awesome right now because the rivers are all flooding because of the rain. You know, and I can still ride my mountain bike. You know, we have you know, if I pick the right trail, so I'm not ruining the ground and stuff. Right, so there's a lot of activities in there, and I've shifted between some over the years. I get very, very head into stuff, you know, commit a lot of time to it. And I, you know, especially with paddling, it gets to a certain point or a certain grade or, you know, class of river, class of water. But if you're not doing it all the time, you know, you got to be careful. You have to be careful. Yeah. So taking it to a certain level and then maintaining that. Climbing has been a big source of recreation for me over a number of years, more recently than past, because my youngest son is my main climbing partner, and that gives us the opportunity. We started climbing together when he was probably 12 or 13, so he came to an event with me. You know, he's 22, and I will see him the end of this week in Montana, and we'll climb. So the climbing also, too, for me, my goal as I look down the road is to do more with adaptive climbing. And I have a background in adaptive skiing from Breckenridge, Colorado. So selfishly, I said, oh, I'll be a really nice guy and I'll start doing that. But it gives me access to climbing. And
sure.
But there's some amazing programs out there, you know, Paradox Sports being just an incredible organization in Colorado, and locally more and more coming up and such. So
wonderful. What turned you on to adaptive skiing to begin with? Was there a personal story that is?
Oh, yes. So I moved to Breckenridge from Denver, and I was up there doing some restaurants in a deli in the market for people. And I can remember getting on the chairlift one day, and the lift operator and this gentleman were pushing a sit ski. Basically, it was a Mountain Smith Poke. It was before mono skis were even around. And they were pushing this up to the chairlift with a young lady in it, severely disabled with cerebral palsy. And they asked if I would help pop her onto the chair. So with her instructor or her helper and myself, we popped her onto the chairlift and we rode up together. I can still hear Trish giggling. She was so excited, and she was unable to communicate verbally, but she could squeal and laugh and giggle like there was no tomorrow. So we got to the top, and I followed them down, skied with them, and started talking to the gentleman who was Dick Carlton, who was a big part of the Breckenridge Education Center. And I said, how do I get involved with this? And I did a training the following weekend. And I remember clearly, I got done with my first day of training, and the director, Carol, looked at me and she said, I don't want you coming back for the training tomorrow. And I was crushed. I just almost stopped breathing. She said, can I give you a student and get you out on the mountain tomorrow? So I went from there, and I worked for 10 years doing that as a volunteer, and I was on their board and a few other things. So it was very important to me. That was the hardest part about leaving Colorado and moving to Washington. For me, it was leaving that program.
Yeah. Wow. It really pulls the heartstrings, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to do a little bit of work up here when I got up here through some people I knew from the U.S. Disabled Ski Team, but I was a starving rep. So volunteering all my weekends was not going to work. So I ended up donating a fair amount of snowshoes to the program up here, Outdoors for All. And it's one of the bigger user days now by using snowshoes to get their students out. So
how wonderful. You talk about access. It really is bringing access to a whole new level.
Completely.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the comment on snowshoeing, 25 feet is a snowshoe experience, if that's what your capacity is.
Sure. Absolutely. How wonderful. And so where did you transition into adaptive climbing?
So I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to be down at Smith Rock working one of the cragging classics. And there was an adaptive clinic going on within that with one of the Sterling athletes, Mo Beck. And Mo is amazing. Many people know who she is without knowing who she is through some movies she's done in outreach. She's very involved with Paradox Sports. And I'm probably not giving her the credit there as I should be, but as far as her title or what her part is. But anyways, I went out with them, the group, to help out. And because one of the things that I got very good at with the adaptive skiing is figuring out how to make bends, shape, make things to work. You know, how do we adapt this to it and stuff. So I really wanted to kind of see how, what was out there in that. Out of that clinic, ended up creating several now still very good friends. And so I rallied them and I said, okay, you guys all have to meet me in Bozeman in December, and we'll do an adaptive ice climbing clinic. Now that's not new. Paradox does a great job with that down in Uray, and other programs around the country do it, but it was my own little world there that I wanted to try to get going. So we had 4 or 5 students, which were mostly all my friends and my new acquaintances. And we had the first adaptive ice climbing clinic with the Bozeman Fest. We're gearing up for another one this year. So we'll see what happens there. And hopefully we can put something together for Valdez this year, if that works. We're working with Challenge Alaska to see what opportunities we have there.
Okay.
So,
all right. That's great.
Yeah. So,
yeah, we would love to have that. An adaptive clinic that really flies, and working with Challenge Alaska up at for the Valdez Ice Climbing Festival. February 18th to the 20th. We are in full swing of trying to get these clinic descriptions and doing some surveys for some people that might be able to come up, and we've got the pre-sales going on still until the end of November, and then sales to the public opens up December 1st. So adaptive climbing is definitely going to be it's going to be a highlight. So I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
I had made several attempts to get to Valdez over the years and got shut down by weather every time, whether I was trying to drive or trying to fly. And last year was my first year finally being able to get there. And I had a blast. It was a great fest. Really had a lot of fun teaching there. I was just working with a couple of the sponsored climbers. And the accessibility was awesome. I mean, you could drive up to POS or Horse Hill, and just park on the side of the road, and get right to it and stuff. So that's a big one. That's one of the challenges about Bozeman is you've got to get up the canyon. So there is some limitations there, what you can do,
Right.
Which makes Ouray so perfect for it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Valdez in a great way. So
excellent. Yeah. So in Bozeman, you have to somehow get to highlight, and there's an arrangement now with the Bozeman Ice Climbing Festival board. And is it the BLM that?
It's the county.
Okay.
They plow the roads, and they just finished paving part of that road this year, which is great, which goes around the reservoir up there. That arrangement through Friends of Highlight Canyon is amazing thing, because the hard people that set that, really put the highlight on the map, had to work really hard to get there. I'm kind of glad I wasn't ice climbing this. I didn't have to ski in X amount of miles or something, of course. But yeah, to make that quality of climbing in that environment accessible in the winter in Montana is just, it's pretty special. So.
How wonderful. Now, do you guys get any backlash, like from people that are thinking that they wish that they wanted to keep it to themselves and they liked it, when you had to ski in?
I'm sure there is, but
you're not hearing it.
I'm not gonna hear it. I'm not
block it out.
Yeah, exactly. I look at it this way. That's what creates further exploration. You don't want to be around people. You're going to keep pushing it and pushing it. And
there you go. I like that. Yeah. You got to keep pushing the edge. Right?
Yes, exactly. But that circles back around to what we talked about earlier is, protecting that and making sure, there's people, once you do something and you have a little ownership in it, it's great. It's such a motivator. I had a friend years ago, I was talking about doing the adaptive work, and he said, "You do it because you're selfish." I was completely offended by that comment. What do you mean I'm sorry? He said, what's it do for you? I said, it makes me feel good. He said, you're not making yourself feel good for someone else, right? You're doing it for yourself. He said, there's nothing wrong with feeling good about doing something for somebody.
Yeah.
But that's a motivation, And he said, and you're still selfish. And I'm like, no. So
that's funny. He was just pulling your leg there. I mean, just kind of breaking your bones a little bit, because some people do believe that there's no such thing as altruism, and other people think that the whole point of altruism is to create that good feeling that you are doing something good.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that.
Why not?
One of the things I love about teaching is seeing someone progress. And my mother, who spent many, many years of her life as a teacher, is like, how can someone enjoy teaching so much who dislike learning so much? So I said, my teaching is how I learn. Because you process it, you think about it, you try to think about how someone else is interpreting what you're saying. I would say the best thing my teaching ever benefited from was teaching in the adaptive world, where I had to bring things to one movement at a time, more of a simple component. And I don't say that in a comprehensive way, but you don't need 35 things to tell you turn your head downhill when you turn your eyes downhill. So really taking it down to motion, action, and reaction, and how you get someone to follow through on. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that there is, it gives you a perspective, and then it also gives you an appreciation, because I think that once you hit a certain level of expertise in whatever sport it is, it's easy to forget, kind of where you started from and what those challenges were that you had to overcome. And many times, in the cycling world or in other athletics, I've heard somebody say, that I've taken out maybe for their first, 10 or 20 mile bike ride. And they, people will comment like, what is this, you can do 120 miles. Why are we sitting here celebrating 20 miles? And, my private message was, well, you don't realize this was the first time that this person ever took a 20-mile bike ride. This was a huge accomplishment for that person. Yeah. And I get goosebumps thinking about it, but it really was thrilling for me too. It was a different kind of like weird, excitement. That I didn't personally accomplish anything myself, but being there, it refreshed that whole new experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so. And again, it's coming back, it's super satisfying to see someone make those incremental growths and learning from, building a foundation in anything we do in our life and our business or anything, build that foundation, and is best that you can build that and then take the next step and the next step and the next step.
For sure. Super
important for learning. So
in yoga, they call it having a beginner's mind.
Yeah, very much so. Yep. Mm-hmm.
All of those things too. There's a difference between being an athlete and being an encourager.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a lot more athletes in the world than there are encouragers, and it's hard sometimes to understand exactly what that is, to be an encourager. And ironically, we have so many people that really need to be introduced to the wonders of, either climbing or just being outdoors in nature, taking a nature bath,
Yeah, it's a great expression. Yeah. Well, especially now, inclusion is a big thing. How do we get more people doing this and stuff? And that can bring in a lot of different groups. We have a tendency our industry's been guilty of this for a while, is we're not inclusive to a lot of just the body types that we have out there.
Yes.
And in making things that gives everyone a great piece of equipment or good clothing, the proper footwear and stuff, because that is going to encourage that time out. It's going to make it more comfortable. It's going to be more fun. And not making special stuff, just making everything so it works for everyone, or making stuff that works for everyone. So.
Right. It's hard to explain sometimes because, like, for example, I teach adults how to ride a bicycle. Like, never ridden a bicycle before.
Oh, yes.
And so, they always ask me then, because they don't own a bicycle, well, what should I buy? And, it's complicated because there are so many different varieties and different, venues for your bicycle. Is it going to be road? Is it going to be mountain? Is it going to be a commuter? And different tires go with that. Different gearing goes with that. And, I always say, well, make the investment, because if you can, or learn how to do the mechanics and then do some of this stuff for free yourself, but make the investment of the time or the money, because you want to enjoy it. If you buy an old rusty bicycle from a garage sale and it doesn't work, you're not going to ride it. Get something that that's going to take you there.
Yeah, very much so. And then also too, is like people buy their entry level piece of equipment by the price. They're like, well, you're just going to buy another one here relatively soon after this, and now you're going to spend more.
Exactly.
When we were snowshoeing, I'll quote a gentleman, God rest his soul, Locke Miller, who was in the industry forever, and he used to joke that our snowshoeing was a 12-step program. After 12 steps, you were a snowshoer. Because if he hadn't fallen down by that point,
I love it.
Succeeded in snowshoeing on that. But same thing there too. I always am careful when I see something listed as a beginner or an entry level. There are certain things that have more capacity than someone might need.
Yeah.
But again, buying into something or investing in it up front usually has a better return.
Yes.
That's why one of the things that we do a lot in our industry is demos. And we have either, with Ultra, we do demo runs all the time at shops and stores with shoes so you can try it on. The Ice Fest.
Yes.
If we ever totaled up the amount of dollars in equipment that come to an ice fest for people to try them, it's a little bit scary. It's a lot of money and stuff, but it gives people an opportunity, especially we're starting to put, $350 tools or bike demos. I have good friends that are bike reps. They have a lot of money in that trailer, but it gives someone an opportunity to try it. How's it feel?
Right.
And I think there's a lot of shops out there that do an awesome job of doing that. Go take it for a ride or take it for a walk or something, and let them get a feel of it, get a feel for it.
It's the only way to know, Yeah, and it's complicated too, especially if you're talking about ice climbing. Kendra Strict was talking about how this student was just almost on the verge of tears, basically, because she thought that she was just terrible at ice climbing. And when they had their break, she took off her crampons and put her picks aside. And then Kendra noticed that no one had ever filed the crampons before.
Yeah.
And some people might not even realize that, that files are like in an ice climber's, cash in their backpack,
Yep.
So
every bag I have has them in it. So, well, and that's where it's great when the vendors come out with the tools, come out with the boots, there's two of us talking right now. There's 4 different feet. So you just need to put stuff on. You need to try it. And what works for you may not work as well for me.
Sure.
What works for me doesn't work for you. So that's a great opportunity. There's some really fun businesses coming out now where they will rent you your equipment. They'll rent you a full package to go backpacking for the weekend. So you can try this tent, you can try this sleeping bag and use the stove. And again, really good retailers will have some of that stuff. Now, they can't have everything. It would just be a little bit of a financial burden and a management nightmare. But those items that are an investment, you need to try them out and see how. And
Absolutely.
Then the other nice thing about the events, and you're going to put a corral on because I'll get all excited about events, is I encourage people to do these type of events because they start moving up the path of learning with fellow people at the same pace. So you can create a little bit of community. You're not the only one that's trying to figure this out. Someone else is trying to figure it out. And then you see it every time where someone who's just getting into it, they may lean over to the person next to them and say, hey, try holding it this way, because it's working for them. And they're not trying to teach them. They're just sharing their experience. And it has a tendency to build on top of itself. So.
Very good point. No, I think that events, especially because so many gear reps do come out and allow rentals or demos, you do get a good sampling of things, maybe before you go ahead and make a big investment. And then there is a learning curve to it because there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to something like ice climbing. And I imagine it's the same no matter what sport you're going to go get into. But I mean, when you're talking about running, for example, you might be, saying, okay, we'll start with your shoes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then maybe you record your gait, right? And then you might talk about like, what you're actually going to wear and if there are like if there are any protective things, but you might be talking about maybe two handfuls of things. When you're talking about ice climbing, you are really diving into tools for your tools. You're talking about cold weather. You're talking about protecting yourself and having some knowledge of what's the difference from merino wool to like the wool that your grandpa, was wearing. Why can't I bring this old army jacket that it's wool? Why can't I wear that? It was good enough for grandpa. But the technology in the gear has changed a lot.
It has, and it has to regulate quite well. I mean, the person standing at the bottom waiting their turn is shivering, and then they come down. First of all, they're so excited they're warmed up anyways, but they just exerted themselves, So having that proper equipment stuff. And makes
And
a
there
big,
are
big
some little
difference.
tips too. Marcus Garcia and I were talking about putting hot broth in your thermos.
Oh yeah,
To
yeah,
warm up from the inside,
yeah, yeah.
right?
No, the chicken bouillon in a thermos will save you. Let's say we're warm, we've got salt, it's
Yes.
hot, it's got oil in it, so that's yeah,
Lots of great little tips. And I think that that's a community tip, you
yeah,
know. That would be
yeah.
something like if you, didn't if first time this is your first time going to an ice climbing festival. Well, my goodness, is it going to be 30 below? What do I, first of all, how am I going to stay warm out there? Well, have some chicken soup in your
Yeah,
thermos,
yeah.
you know?
Well, it's always great to be at the second day because there's a lot of learning that goes on the first day. You'll
Second day
see
is
that.
fun.
Yeah, the second day you'll see that extra jacket or
Yeah.
the hood up on top of the helmet earlier in the day, or just multiple things. And again, that community, you observe and you listen, you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot. So
Yeah, that is fantastic. So did you start off rock climbing and then you transitioned to ice climbing, or did you do both?
yes, I would say rock,
Cold.
rock first and then into ice.
Okay.
And I have a long ski background, backcountry and front side, but backcountry a lot for multiple years. And then, if the snow is great and the stability is just perfect, I'll probably be on the skis. If the ice is good and I'm in the right location, I'll be on the ice. Um, the climbing aspect of it takes me back to something that's a big focus of mine, and again, and that is action and reaction, and force and counter force. So how to best utilize the body, how to best utilize the movement, the tools, the holds, and everything. The ice is fun for me because my son lives in Bozeman. Both my boys live in Bozeman, so I have a good excuse to get over there and climb over there with them and such. And it's also an area where there's a fair amount of new people coming into it. So it's really fun. I mean, this morning I was working with a local gym, and one of the instructors there is building a dry tool clinic within the thing. So I am not an authority, but we had 2.5 hours of dry tooling in the gym, and just swapping ideas. And
Yeah.
he was tweaking his curriculum and such. And there's a great group of people out here in the Seattle area that have been developing a dry tool area not too far from here. And it is almost shocking how many people are interested in coming out. Of course, there are other people that it's pouring. There's nothing dry about this. I said, yeah, but you can't rock climb on it and there's no ice. So
Yeah.
but it's an extension of it. It's teaching you, more movement with your hands, your tools, your feet, what you're doing. So
Right. And that also brings up so dry tooling clinics tend to either reserve a spot or build out a new area where there could be a dry tooling clinic because either the tools are going to be different or you're going to damage either your tools or the climbing gym, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like a whole other indoor dry tooling is like a whole other thing.
Yes. Yeah. And there's I think there is one gym in Boulder. There is one that's privately owned that's opened up here in Seattle. Small one, is reservations only.
Okay.
With a really great group, super core, World Cup affiliation and stuff as far as the the founder. And it's just another extension. It's another opportunity to get out. And for most people, dry tooling is practice. For alpine climbing, we're going to have mixed routes. For some people, it's just its own workout within itself. But being very conscious of it, not trying to dry tool on an outdoor area that's set up for rock, for climbing, for rock climbing. Having something separate because you're going to scratch the rock all up, and it's very different in the way it's set up. So.
Yeah, the boom in ice climbing has really created a new set of sort of unspoken rules or unspoken ethics, code of ethics, for the climbing community, really.
Yeah.
Now, how do you feel about Valdez Adventure Alliance recently was granted an award to do a video on ice stewardship. Yeah, and it's interesting. Some of the people that I first introduced even the concept to, they were saying, oh, well, you don't do manufactured ice, or, well, you have to do manufactured ice, or you only do manufactured ice, or I grew up in a flat area and we only had manufactured ice. So there's like all of these different things, but that's even that doesn't begin to touch on the general concept of ice stewardship with regard to this growing sport. So what are some of the things, what are some of your thoughts on that? What would be your recommendation?
My first thought on ice is it has to be cold. So if we do a little bit better and lean into keeping our global temperature in check, we'll have more ice. Or we won't lose any more ice on that one and stuff. So as far as if it's manufactured or not manufactured, if it's natural, natural ice is going to be in a setting where we have to have access. And it has to be in an area that we can go in and out of and not have a long-term effect on or have a damaging effect on it. So we may be walking on the snow. It may be later in the season where it's starting to melt off and you get some runoff. How we make sure that when we leave there, it's still going to be the same shape. Actually, how do we leave there and leave it better? Manufactured ice, I wish I had the ability to do that in my backyard right here. That brings more control to the environment. It gives more access. I mean, the Uray Ice Park is amazing.
100%. Yep.
And that's just the amount of people that can get in that and use it. Coming back to Paradox Sports and having the accessibility to get people down into the canyon and such is really, really important. But I think, we're not going to change what the globe is doing necessarily to affect our immediate ice climbing, but it comes back around to just being aware and being more conscious and being more responsible on our own ends. So.
And having that sense of community, like you were saying earlier, where people are communicating with one another, like, hey, I didn't get back into that far canyon. Is the ice good?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to have maybe if you're a beginner, you don't realize you see an ice fall and you don't realize that it's not really ready yet.
Yeah. And that's a big one now. And I know there's several communities that are saying, wait, hold off, let it form up some. Because you can beat it up. You can beat it up pretty hard. Little things. When you get tough to climb, it's pretty tempting to put a tool in that big fat tree because it's going to stick, but you don't want to be doing that. So leaving webbing and tat, they call it. With V threads and stuff. There's just being more conscious. Being more aware of what you're doing, what's the long-term effect of it and stuff. So
absolutely. Yeah. No, that was one of the first things that I asked our safety team lead for the Valdez Ice Climbing Festival. We are going to go back in there and see if we can gather up all those V threads, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah. He said that still, you're going to, in the springtime, you're still going to see some, cord down there, but that somebody maybe left once upon a time or whatnot. But that's definitely, I think, a new thing that's on the top of people's minds as they're going out, just like cleaning a route, going back there and getting all of that cord. So
I have to admit that I was doing just a solo scrambling in the Cascades one time, and it was near a relatively high volume alpine route. And for some reason I had forgot my belt, and I was actually looking for a piece of tat at the bottom of the route so I could use it as a belt.
There you go.
And I couldn't find any. I said, maybe there's some 7 mil cord down the bottom here. But everyone was clean and tidy, so I didn't get my free belt out of it.
That's fun. Yeah. So these days with the whole digital thing, what would be some pieces of advice that you would give to maybe some new reps that are coming into the outdoor industry?
Well, it comes all back to the first lessons in kindergarten. Just treat people the way you want to be treated, right? You want to sell in is not the hard part. I love my old lessons I learned as a butcher from the old guard. They can sell anything once, right? What you need is someone to buy it the second time. So how do you ensure that is going to be successful? Is it appropriate for what they're doing? Do you understand what their landscape is in their store? Who's their customer? How does it fit in with the other products and such? And making sure that it is a profitable result for them. Retailers spend a lot of money to put a rock shoe box on the shelf or hang a piece of clothing on the rack. They've rented a building, they pay their taxes, they pay their staff, they paid that inventory, and they committed to it a long time ago. So making sure that their business is your priority. Getting into the business, the avenues have changed quite a bit. Most brands are represented by an agency. An agency can be used pretty loosely, but as I mentioned earlier, the days of one person driving around in the car, it's just, you can't do it. I had a good friend say, I can't drive to Montana to high five at $4 a gallon for gas. It has to be productive in there. My business, our agency, is built on education. Just making sure that people knew what you were selling, why you were selling it, and what the benefit was to their customer, is going to be to their customer. And does it fit in with what they're doing? What's the rest of their mix? So kind of coming back to your question, we see a lot of people step from a retail environment into a tech rep position where they're really out there doing the clinicking and the teching and such, and then moving into more of a sales position. That's kind of the pathway that happens in that. A huge part of our business now, and it's something that I made a commitment to a long time ago, was really digging into the numbers, having a business analyst, having someone who is not out driving around with a bag of stuff in the back of their car, but they're really watching those numbers. They're looking at what's coming in, what's going into the stores, what's their sell-through. And the industry has evolved quite a bit in the last few years on that, but it's something that I personally have invested in for a long time. I started the agency, I owned it for almost 29 years, and I sold my business as of January this year to my general manager, who is my business analyst. So, they'll slowly push me, they'll push me out the door at some point on that.
Never.
I love the street, so I like being out there because I like listening. For someone who talks as much as I do listen. But it's that everything's a lesson. Every single thing's a lesson in look around. So, and again, coming back around to that question, talk to the reps, talk to the manufacturers. We've all changed so much in the last 2 years. With digital presentations and virtual trainings and such. So never say never. I mean, there's no real boundaries on this thing. Come up with a creative way.
Yeah. Constant evolution. What are your brands right now for perpetual motion?
Ultra footwear, Gregory backpacks, Meridian line, sealskins, waterproof socks and gloves, Corkers traction, and features socks. And then we have a few other brands that we don't necessarily hang on our shingle, that we help them with their numbers and some of their inventory management and such. And again, that sprung out of us having to pretty robust business analyst
Yes.
part of our business. So,
very good.
And the one thing that technology has all created is this need to respond 5 minutes ago.
Oh, right.
It just, it feels, you get an email from someone, then you'll get a text from them. It's like, yeah, I saw it. Give me a second here.
Yeah.
But I always remind myself and remind my coworkers is if you ask me a question, that is the only question you think I have to answer. It's the only question you're aware of that I have to answer. You know I'm busy. You know I'm doing a bunch of stuff. But that question is what you need an answer to. And I have to take that question, receive that question, like it's the only question I have on my plate. I owe that to you.
Right.
So being able to manage all of this that's coming in and out at a pretty rapid rate. As I sit here and watch my phone just lighting up over here next to me with stuff.
Yeah.
But, that's the biggest challenge. And then just be honest, just be honest. I will tell someone I made a mistake or you shouldn't do that. It's actually faster than I'll tell them they should do it. It's super, super important. For someone who raised a good pile of boys, I always reminded them that you lose trust, you don't gain it.
Right.
So trust you 100% until I don't. So
yes. That part is guilty or innocent until proven guilty, so to speak. But also, the irony in all of this, and as we're wrapping up and getting to the flashing lights and things like that too, one of the things that I had to learn as I was working with all of these athletes was that did you go to the Kragan Classics? Everybody's always outside. Yeah. So sometimes, especially, and you are out in the field quite a bit. Yes. You do have to have a little bit of grace and a little bit of patience because, they're not answering right away, or you're maybe not answering right away because you're teaching a clinic or you are in the mountains somewhere, who knows where, Yes. So there's that as well that just kind of, I think, comes hand in hand with the outdoor industry. Some of y'all reps and things like that probably have some offices. You are fortunate enough to be in a yurt, and
which is raining really hard on right now.
Wow. And don't you have a bicycle? Red or something?
Big Red. Yeah. Which has 4 coffee cup holders on it. So
perfect.
When someone goes to the post office, they go by the coffee stand and can carry 4 coffees back to the office. Yeah, that's our little tiny bit of green during the day. Is it has a basket to go to the post office and UPS and coffee holders to bring the coffee back. So yeah,
I think that's excellent. Every business should have a yurt and a Big Red with a basket.
Yeah. The yurt has been fun, and it really made a difference when we transitioned over to digital presentation because we would turn the camera on and people were like, where are you? We're in our yurt, so I'm very lucky here. We have a great spot here. We're 25 miles outside of Seattle. I have everything you can think of growing in the yard because it used to be in the old Herb Farm restaurant. And
wow.
We have our yurt, which in a yurt within itself is just wonderful to merchandise in because of the round walls and stuff. So
yeah,
it's a good spot.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking some time for me today, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Michelle, I thank you for the opportunity. I had fun. So
great. Well, I look forward to emailing with you about some ropes from Sterling and seeing you at the Valdez Ice Climbing Festival.
All right, let's go climbing.
Thanks again for listening to LoTech Tuesdays by LoTech and Wild. This podcast supports Valdez Adventure Alliance up in Valdez, Alaska, where they strongly believe in nature therapy. Their goal is to bring this to those who will appreciate it, one might say those who need it. Their focus is teaching through play. They are strong encouragers. The events and resources that they provide will help people find the satisfaction of self-accomplishment through effort. of climbing, of riding bikes, of hiking, of trail building, of immersing in nature. They encourage people to allow themselves to surrender to the flow of the vast beauty of those mountains and the Prince William Sound. Their objective is to be a resource for people to find deep happiness and healthy outlets for themselves in these ever-trying times. We would like to shout out to some of the Valdez Adventure sponsors, including IMBA, International Mountain Biking Association, Access Fund, Protecting America's Climbing, and the American Alpine Club. Some local sponsors include the City of Valdez, the CVEA Community Foundation, Alyeska Pipeline, the Fat Mermaid, the Prospector, Valdez Avalanche Center, Raven, Alaska. We'd also like to give a big shout out to Loa Boots, Tiger Tail, Hyperlight, the National Scenic Byway Foundation, Mountain Equipment, RAB, and Nick Wax. Thanks again for listening and enjoy your day.